Today we are going to be talking about emotions. We are going to look at how do we define emotions, the importance of emotions, the effects of emotions, and emotions and spirituality as part of this video. Defining emotions. Emotions is a natural response of the body to an action, pleasant or unpleasant, liked or disliked, enjoyed or hated, etc. Remember, generally emotion is more an instinctual response, but over time we can actually change it by learning and modifying our responses. Every one of us have individual levels of experience, minimal or maximum, based on passion, instinct, ability, and personality, and where we are in life at that point in time. For example, if I'm sitting in a forest and even a tiny speck of something touches me, I'm going to get very alert and possibly respond in an aggressive manner just to make sure that there is nothing dangerous touching me. But if I know if I'm at home and I'm gently being touched by a soft hand, it could be my child, I naturally have a pleasant experience, not expecting a cockroach crawling on me or anything like that. One of the problems with emotions is that emotions are not measurable to date. Only our responses provide some idea about the intensity of a person's emotional reaction. What do I mean by that? Suppose someone says something to me and I get angry. It is only when I walk away in an angry manner, when my body tightens up, when I throw things at him, or when I start speaking loudly against him and argue, that people realize that I'm angry. But there are people who have emotional reactions and they will suppress them and they will keep them within themselves, what we refer to as introverts rather than extroverts. And their emotional reaction may be equally very strong or stronger, but it is not visible. You may just see a slight wry face or teary eyes or a little bit of an anger on the face, and you think, oh, it's just a minor thing, but it could be a massive thing for that person. Why is all this important? The next point makes it very clear. Irrespective of whether you're introvert or extrovert, whether you react or don't react, all emotions convert to chemical elements to impact our body and influence change. So, you must be aware that we talked about food. Food changes into chemical elements. Mental activity changes into chemical elements to stimulate the brain, etc., etc., and thus influence the body. Emotions also convert to chemical elements to impact our body and influence change. We should not think that emotions are like a gust of wind. It just comes and goes and doesn't do harm to the body. It can do harm, it can do good, and we are going to talk about that as we go along. So, what is the importance of emotions for our life? Firstly, emotions are essential for life. It is because of emotions that I'm talking to you in a sort of toned voice. If I did not have any emotion, my talk would be importance of emotions, essential for life. They provide spice to life in small doses. Joy, sorrow, loss, grief, injury, robbery, rape, accidents, etc. are aspects of life and generate emotion naturally. Now you can see in this diction that I'm not putting any aspect of emotion at all. I'm not putting passion into it. So I'll repeat it. Importance of emotions. It is essential for life to make it interesting. They provide spice to life in small doses only. I've specified in small doses only. So if somebody gets a little bit angry, argues, has a bit of joy, has a bit of grief, in small doses they're quite good, bring change and bring us to reality and understanding and help us go through life with variety. Some of the emotions are joy, sorrow, loss, grief, injury, robbery, rape, accidents, etc. These all generate different emotions. Now I know people will say, in an injury, what sort of emotions? You may get very angry at the person who caused the injury. Or you may become depressed because you got hurt yourself. In a robbery, you may get very angry how somebody has invaded you, has literally taken away your stuff at the loss. Accidents, you may be angry who was the stupid driver, or if you were the silly driver, you would get angry on yourself, or you may feel depressed that how could I make such a stupid mistake, etc. These are all aspects of life and generate emotions naturally. Emotions impact in bringing change to people and society, positively or negatively. Every one of the emotions we are talking about, as they influence us, they shape us, and it influences us to become people. For example, philanthropy. Somebody who has made a lot of money, successful in life, decides he's going to help the needy and the downtrodden. And a lot of times it is because that person cannot stand people suffering, or he or she has come from a minimalist background and understands the very nature of poverty or very nature of not having adequate resources. So they might decide to go into philanthropy. Careers. People of a helping nature, people who have been impacted and hurt and feel that they should help others, may choose careers like medicine, nursing, or health related, where they can help people, counseling, etc. By the same token, there are plenty of instances of people who have been impacted by emotions negatively. By that I mean they have been downtrodden, they have been pushed around, they have been told they are useless, etc. And they develop themselves into aggressive, physical, tormenting individuals, and they may turn into hoodlums and who might take over areas and manage the show. That is because in their understanding, that is their only way to cope with people who they have met with and how it has influenced them. So what are the effects of emotions? The first thing we know, food changes to elements before absorption in the body. Physical activity changes into elements before benefiting or damaging the body. Example, muscle activity, tears, lactic acid, sweat, heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, etc., which influences change. Mental activity does similarly. Brain electrical activity, or referred to as EEGs, blood supply to the brain, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. changes. Emotions also change into chemicals to influence the body. Good, balanced, proportional emotional changes can influence positively. Excess emotional changes can influence negatively. As the saying goes, anything in excess can be harmful. What happens when we experience emotions? Hormones are released and the fight or flight response may be triggered. Such chemicals, if not excreted, can be dangerous to our system acutely and chronically. In today's world as we know it, there is lots of emotional stress. What I refer to as between the ears. What do I mean between the ears? It all happens inside the skull box, in the brain. Emotions are not on my head, emotions are not outside, they happen between the ears. Most of the time, this is because of our perception and our response. So if I perceive something which is terrible, I may get angry. If I perceive something which is pleasant, I may be happy. Let's take a few examples. I get upset at my boss for not promoting me. When I'm looking at it from my perspective that I've been working there for 5 or 10 years, I deserve a promotion and I haven't got it and boss has been terrible. But the boss is looking at it in terms of 5 or 10 or 15 people who he or she has to evaluate. They evaluate on their basis, they look at where the right slot is, what sort of promotion is required, whether I have enough skills or somebody else has more, whether that will make the chain work better, the system work better, and then they decide to do so. But we forget that and we take a one-sided view from our perspective and we get upset. Upset at husband because of no caring words at home. Now sometimes this can become a bane. I'll give you a classic example of a friend of mine living overseas. There is a general tendency, whatever your partner does, as soon as they do something, you say, oh, how nice, how wonderful. A classic example that I had was, I gave a friend of mine a gift. It was a birthday and I gave her a gift. Even before she opened it, she said, oh, thanks, it's so wonderful, so nice, etc., etc. And I said, hi, how do you know it's nice? How do you know there's something in the box? I know you're thanking me for the gift, but you're also saying how wonderful it is. At least have a look before you say it. And these are the problems that happen with people who get conditioned to thinking that way. Same with please and thank you. People tend to say please at every time and they say thank you for everything. But there's a difference between saying thanks, thank you very much, or when you do something, say thanks. You can sense in the tone that they are saying it just because for the sake of saying it. Or the other classic one that I really love, a couple enjoying their life in middle age. One fine day the wife says to the husband, you know, you never appreciate my cooking. You always pick on this wasn't right and that wasn't right and this wasn't perfect. But why don't you appreciate my cooking like how the foreigners do? They say, oh, that was wonderful, this was wonderful, how nice, etc., etc. So the husband says, okay, we shall do that. From the next day, when the cup of tea arrives, he says, oh, that's a lovely cup of tea. When he sits down at mealtime, he says, oh, that dish was fabulous, this dish is so good, etc., etc. Less than 48 hours later, the wife screams at him and says, what the hell is going on? He says, you asked me to appreciate everything, all these are good things, I'm appreciating. No. I don't want you to do that. I want you to go back to your old self. That was better. You didn't say anything, and if there was something wrong, you said this was wrong. Now this is becoming too artificial. The point I'm making is a lot of things become artificial in the way we consider normality. If we let nature take its course, you will find that the husband has a lot of care about his family, about the home, about the way he behaves. But he may not necessarily present it in words in every manner at every opportunity. Another classic one is kids get upset with parents for non-delivery. Kids come home and say, oh, I want this, I want this toy this year. And the parents say, no, you can't have it. They have no idea about the financial commitment. They have no idea about the responsibility of the parent. They have no idea about what their allocation of funds is this month from the parents' perspective. They have no idea about whether the parents have the funds or not. But they sit there and fret and wonder how terrible it is that they can't get something. So these things are all done because we look at it from one perspective. School punishes kids for delays. Now, if they are going to enforce discipline, there is going to be some form of carrot and stick approach. But we tend to look at it slightly differently, and when we change our perspective, our reactions change. When we look at the other perspective, it's not uncommon for parents to complain to the teachers about their kids being treated in a particular way. When they go to a parents-teachers meeting or go to an individual session, when the teacher explains the background, they shut up and say, "Oh, okay, all right, sorry," because they don't know the reality and they have heard only one part of the story from their child. Abuse as a child, adult, or elder. I've included these three because these are the three major categories that I have come across people being abused. Now, this may apply in different cases at different levels. It could be sexual abuse, it could be wife bashing, it could be sibling abuse, and it could be elder abuse. A lot of these cases may happen during ignorance and incapacity phase. What do I mean by that? A young child cannot run away and go somewhere to safety. So they may be a target for abuse if that environment exists, and they suffer while they are in their incapacity phase. Or sometimes women get abused and they don't have a place to go. They are stuck there. Elders get abused. They don't have a place to go. They are living with their children and they don't have anywhere else to go. And the children don't take care of them properly, then there is abuse. So because of that, you may live your life with a protective shield and continue to suffer the ignominy of that abuse. For children, when they grow up, become independent and are ready to face the reality, and the reality is two-faced. One is it becomes public knowledge. Second is they are going against their well-wishers, so-called well-wishers. It may be parents, it may be siblings, it may be teachers, or whoever it may be in the case of children abuse. You may then unmask yourself or have the courage to open up and confront the situation. This is one of the survival techniques that is used under adverse circumstances. So in a nutshell, when you are in an adverse situation, you may put up with all the shit that you're getting in any way, manage somehow, and if at a later date you have the courage and the capacity and the support to come out and name and shame people, you may do so. Remember, and this is specifically put in bold, abuse can be physical, can be mental, can be emotional, or can be spiritual. And we are going to touch on spiritual further down the track. So now related to acupuncture and health. Here I have specifically brought in acupuncture because one, that is area of my forte. I am an acupuncturist and I've learned all this. And I want to bring into focus the energies lost at different levels and how they create problems of energy and how that is reflected in terms of acupuncture knowledge. Now this, what I'm going to talk about, is pure acupuncture knowledge. Acupuncture defines health by causes of disease. This is in the classics, the Chinese texts. So we look at cause of disease, and the cause of disease can be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual cause of disease. When we look at a disease, we also look at the depth or intensity of the disease. We are aware that physical causes of disease tend to be of a mild nature. Time to recover, they recover quickly, and their level of difficulty in cures is fairly simple. When there is a mental cause of disease, and we are not necessarily talking about mental cause as in schizophrenia or mental illness. We are talking about mental cause as in stress leading to blood pressure, stress leading to ulcers. Remember, we talked about disease that can present in any way, or we will be talking about it in the future. So, mental cause of disease, the intensity of the disease tends to be moderate. It is a bit more severe than physical cause of disease. Now, this may take a few months to sort out. It's not going to happen so quickly, and generally it's a little bit more difficult to cure. When there is an emotional cause of disease, as in anger, frustration, fear, grief, that is locked into the body, as we refer to it as locked-in syndrome, then the depth or intensity of disease is quite severe. And this can take months and years to recover, because there is a very detailed process of how to go about it. And the level of difficulty in curing this problem is quite difficult. And then the cause of disease is spiritual. Spiritual is where you lose trust, where you have an attitudinal problem, where you have some other issues related to spiritual qualities, which we will talk about. Then the depth or intensity of disease is very severe. It is very difficult to state how long it will take to recover. And the treatment of cause of disease being a spiritual cause requires a very high level of sophisticated superior skills, and even then it may not be possible to get rid of the whole problem completely and cure the patient completely. So now we are going to define the causes a bit in detail. We talked about physical, mental, emotional and spiritual cause of disease. We are going to give you a bit more information on when we talk about physical, we are talking about injury directly to the skin, the muscle, the bones, internal physical injury due to food poisoning, environment, etc. When we talk about environment, it might be frostbite, it might be getting out in the cold without proper clothes, it might be going into the breeze without proper protection on a cold windy day and then suffering, or sunstroke, all those sort of stuff as well. What are the mental causes of disease? Mental causes of disease are where it affects your concentration, or concentration affects it, distraction, focus, disability in lateral thinking, ability and inability in considering other points of view. So if you are of a fixed nature and cannot accept other people's views, then that itself can be a cause of disease. Worry is another cause of disease. And of course, I have not listed everything under mental, but I have given you a perspective. When we talk about emotional cause of disease, some of the major ones are fear, anger, infatuation, hate, jealousy, frustration, obsession, grief, joy, and variations of above emotions. Now, just listening to me, a lot of you can immediately understand that fear upsets people, anger, infatuation, hate, jealousy can lead to crimes and actions that you regret later on. So these are the things that affect us internally. Remember at the start I said emotions also cause chemical change in the body to influence us. So that is the way it works. And spiritual, this is where I'm putting myself on a limb. It is my personal, educated and professional opinion. Again, I will repeat it. Spiritual cause of disease, defining the spiritual qualities. It is my personal, educated and professional opinion. This is really not about God. We think spirituality is all about God only. I don't think that is the be all and end all. There may be more to it than just God. I believe it is about instinctual total feelings and behavior unlinked to emotion. And let me clarify that a bit more. These spiritual qualities influence our total ability to manage the world. Some of them are trust. Now, when I meet XYZ person, I trust them. Some people I trust more than others. It has nothing to do with emotions, although a lot of psychologists may say emotional qualities are involved. Those are for evaluation. But somewhere along the line, I feel an instinctual ability to trust this person. This person will not do me harm. A classic case is when we get married or when we have a relationship. We do not believe that the person in the relationship is going to violate us. So that is the trust we have when we get together and enjoy our relationship. So, some of them are trust. Unconditional love. The only unconditional love I can put on the top of the sphere is the mother's love for the children. They will do anything for their child irrespective of what happens to them. They will go hungry, they will go without, they will suffer just because they wish their child to be better. Whether it happens or not is the other part. That may be out of their hands. But their desire is for betterment of their children. Belonging. You belong to a nation, belong to a community, belong to a society, belong to a group, belong to a friend circle. That sense of belonging is, I believe, a spiritual quality. Mothering. I talked about unconditional love. Similarly, a mother's attitude to caring. Friendship in a friend circle. A good mateship, friendship is more a spiritual quality. Compassion. Empathy. I know, compassion, you feel sad for somebody. Empathy, you understand what somebody may be experiencing and you may suffer the pangs of their suffering. But this doesn't get taught. It is not an emotion as such. It is an ability to be empathic. It is an ability to be compassionate. It is an ability to be sympathetic. A natural protective attitude. A lot of guys you'll find around, they are generally protective of women or girls. They may not have a bond, they may not have a friendship, they may not have a relationship either, but they can't see injustice being done or somebody being abused. So they will step in and stop that rot. Attitude. The attitude we have. Peace of mind. And generally being at peace. I believe most of these qualities are what I call as spiritual. Now, how do spiritual problems occur? If I am trusting my father and my father makes me lose trust due to abuse, due to behavior, due to actions, that trust is very likely not going to come back soon, and it is going to hurt me where it hurts most, in the worst scenario. The classic case is where a child grows up without a mother and later on finds out that their mother is alive and he or she was an abandoned child. The trust in the mother that they had till they knew that their mother was no more becomes an inviolable anger and frustration and possibly grief, because now they know that their mother did not want them. Either it was an unwanted pregnancy or they hated them and all that sort of stuff. The classic case we can see is the lady who is helping a lot of orphans in Pune. She suffered all that. I think it's Mrs. Sakpal, if my memory is correct. And in the movie that they have made, she confesses to the daughter that she did not do it because she didn't care for her. She did it because she wanted to care for other kids. So, there are lots of instances where these things happen. But from my perspective as a child, I suddenly think, my mother abandoned me, I hate her, I don't trust anybody in life, I will never trust anybody. And it takes a very, very, very long time to develop that trust again. And that is what I call the spiritual quality, which is shattered. And it's very hard to put together again. Enough of that, we'll move on. So, moving on from that understanding of acupuncture where we talked about physical, mental, emotional and spiritual qualities, and physical, mental, emotional, spiritual causes of disease and the difficulty of resolving those disease processes, I came across a German study way back in the 90s which tried to show the effects of physical, mental, emotional and spiritual activities on the body. They looked at the physical qualities, gave people an identified amount of work and got them to do that work, and they noticed that each person spent about X units of energy per hour per person. Now that X number is different depending on size, build, nature, passion, attitude, etc. but it stays constant for that person every hour. So they realized that and they said, okay, we have X units of energy per hour per person. Then they put the same people through mental work, and here they clarified and said there is no pressure, there is no stress, there is no emotions involved, success, failure, etc. We just want you to do this mental work activity, which was a bookish activity of some sort, where they have puzzles and where they have lots of solving to do. And this they graded through different levels. And what they found was mental activity, when it was quantified, the energy expended was anything from 4 to 14 P per hour. P being the amount of energy spent doing physical activity per hour by the same person. So suddenly they became aware that mental activity is a lot more powerful, 4 to 14 times physical activity. And it gave them a sort of big shot across their face to say, hey, we never thought mental activity is so powerful. They're sitting there appearing to doing nothing, but they're spending more energy. And I'm going to give you some examples of that in a minute. Then they decided to consider emotional, and they found that they had to give up because emotional qualitative assessment was impossible. Emotions are more subjective. Some person responds mildly, some person responds aggressively, some person does not respond, but they may have the maximum emotional impact. So it was difficult to standardize, and they gave up. Now, looking from the acupuncture perspective, we know that emotions cause more damage. They are slow to respond to treatment, longer to cure, and require specialized skills. So this does translate as much more energy loss and replacement issues. Based on this thinking, I tend to guesstimate that emotional is quantified as at least 4 to 14 M, or 4 to 14 times mental activity, which means 4 to 14 multiplied by 4 to 14 multiplied at the physical level equals a quantum jump in energy loss. Of course, 4 to 14 depends on whether you get mildly irritated or massively irritated. And spiritual, I cannot hazard a guess at all. Just know that it will be a lot more. So now, we looked at the physical, we looked at the mental. Now, when we say mental is a lot more 4 to 14x, let me give an example. It is common knowledge today that we all sit in conferences, and while we are sitting in a conference in an air-conditioned room, debating over issues for about 45 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, the debates can be quite aggressive, or it can be mild, but there's a lot of exchange of ideas across the table. And by the end of about 60 to 90 minutes, everybody requires a break because they feel they are being fatigued. And we all know that. The ideal period is 45 to 90 minutes, but generally. And they have a tea break. And what is surprising is when they have the break, all these people are fairly famished. They love to go and eat something. They love to go and get a stimulant because they have expended a lot of energy. They have not moved an inch. They have been sitting in a comfortable chair, not sweated, nothing. But they are still hungry. This is a classic example of people sitting in their offices for 8 hours, non-stop work. They have a break at lunchtime and come home really hungry because they have had a hard day at work. And people who are doing physical work wonder what the hell did they do? They just sat there in front of their computer, writing messages, writing notes, signing papers. But mental work, being a lot more involved, drains you a lot more of energy. Now similarly, when we talk about emotion, you will find, I will give an example in the latter part of this presentation, but let me just state that if I get very angry, I can faint. People have seen that. Or I lose my rationality and start acting stupidly. And then I feel tired. That is because in that burst of 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of an emotional outburst, I have drained a hell of a lot of energy, which is why I feel tired. So anyway, we'll come to that in detail in the emotions part 2. So now that we have done this and we are talking about emotions part 1, let us continue on this presentation. I believe the Bharatiya population and a lot of tribals across the globe are more spiritually evolved. I say that because we notice these basic spiritual qualities are inherently present amongst this population, maybe to varying degrees. To take a simple example, such people will tend to share their last morsel of food with others, provide shelter within their means, and possibly treat the visitor or the guest as a god rather than nobody. The quality of care will change, and they may sacrifice their pleasures to provide for the visitors and get immense joy out of that activity. In the Hindu culture in India, we call it Atiti Devo Bhava, which means a visitor is like a godsend to us, and we need to do everything we can to fulfill their wishes within our means. Historically, the generosity of spirit has been abused by all and sundry to be considered meek, mild, and stupid, whether in wars, invasions, trade, etc. Look at the differences amongst people and their spiritual tendencies, and let me explain with a few examples of world history. And I've just taken a few examples here and there. American Indians or the Red Indians, who were friendly to the foreigners who arrived on their land, were killed for land grab and territorial gains. In the early stages, they were friendly, but when war broke out and they were being massacred, they rebelled. The Incas and Mayans were massacred for wealth because the Spanish got there and they realized that they were looking for wealth, and they thought these people were useless, so they just massacred them. The Egyptians were conquered by the Romans for their riches and sophisticated ways of life. The Chinese were abused, conquered, and colonized. We know about the Opium Wars, we know about the Japanese and the Russians overcoming the Chinese, we know about Genghis Khan. So a lot of this has happened in history. The Aborigines of Australia were massacred for no fault of theirs, just because the first colonizers thought that they should get rid of all these dark people. They did that. Of course, today we realize that was folly, but then they just cleaned out. It is said that in Tasmania they knocked out nearly every Aboriginal tribe. Viewing the Bharatiya scene from this perspective, we welcome the British for trade, and they colonized and stripped Bharat naked to the core, including conversions. Conversions, I'm talking about religious conversions to Christianity. We traded with the Portuguese, and they came back to colonize us and convert our population. We fought the Dutch and defeated them, and they never returned in strength. Maybe because we defeated the Dutch before the Portuguese and British came to our shores, the British and Portuguese decided to use tactics of trade rather than war so that they could get into India and colonize us. We don't know that. We repulsed Muhammad of Ghazni, who has been known to invade India many times. And in all the wars that we repulsed him, we spared his life every time. He eventually defeated the Bharatiya king and blinded him and destroyed his kingdom and stripped the coffers bare. Muslims invaded, conquered, and converted the population at the tip of the sword. Live as a Muslim or death as a Hindu on a massive scale across the country, that is in India or Bharat. Bharat has never conquered any country, Rather, it has assisted in personal growth of everyone on earth, irrespective of their nationality. That is how Hinduism had spread across Southeast Asia, and massive temple complexes are being unearthed today. Examples in plain view are Angkor Wat, Java Sumatra temples, and the Bali heritage of Ramayana. It has always given refuge to people in distress, and some have acknowledged in kind. The Zoroastrians, or the Parsis as we know them in Bharat, sought refuge in Udwada, a small place in Gujarat. The local king provided refuge similar for the British as the king in Surat had done, and asked them how they will live their life. Their simple solution was, we will become sugar to the milk of this country and make ourselves invisible. I will repeat that. We will become sugar to the milk of this country and make ourselves invisible. They literally did that. They worked hard, made a success for themselves and the country. Today, over the last 100 odd years, they are in a position of power, but they utilize every ounce of their power towards bettering Bharat, whether it was pre-independence, post-independence, and its people. We owe them a lot. Same as they feel they owe us a lot for providing their survival and giving them land to stay and manage. This is spirituality at its best. On the converse side, the British, who were given trading status in Surat and eventually went on to loot the country of Bharat. Similar is the story at every era. The Pakistanis or East Pakistan, before they became Bangladeshis, migrated by the millions before the formation of their own country, before liberation by Bharat. Not all of them returned to their country. We accepted them in good faith, but some rogue elements spoiled the name and abused the privileges provided. Similar with the Rohingya refugees, welcomed earlier, but on abuse of privileges, reviewed in different light. One of the greatest acts of spiritual enlightenment undertaken by our first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, was related to the Jewish community. When Israel was born in 1948, all the Jews resident in India and wishing to join Israel were provided with a clear outline of the following. Every one of you have lived all your life here and are stable. We understand your need to migrate and be with your fellow brethren. But we offer you a privilege of trying the new country for a few years. If after your experience you wish to return to Bharat, we will welcome your return with open arms. The Jewish community and Israel as a country have never forgotten this magnanimous gesture. By the way, Bharat was the only country who gave them this solace and support. They therefore treat every Bharatiya visiting their shores with special privileges, like they did a friend of mine who narrated this story, forever etched in the mind of every Israeli. This is spirituality at its best, belonging, mothering, and security. So in summary, what I would like to say now is emotions and their necessity. We all know they are essential. We talked a little bit about emotions and their effects on the body in terms of chemical reactions and chemical change and how it influences the body. We did touch on the fact that these chemical changes that occur in the body have to be excreted, otherwise their side effects will affect us. We had an energetic guesstimation of emotions and their power. We touched on acupuncture to use understanding of emotions and disease. We also talked about spirituality and some of the spiritual attitudes of tribals and Bharatiya in general. So now we come to health benefit time. We have spoken a lot about emotions, their need, their chemical changes, their influence on the body, how they change their guesstimation of energy value in terms of how much loss or gain we can have from emotions. We talked about spirituality and redefining spirituality as I believe it is. That is only my version, so please don't make that a gospel truth, but think about it. And then we talked about spirituality amongst the Bharatiya community as a overall nature of people and about spirituality in tribals. Now, what do you need to do? You need to understand this emotion impact and emotions per se, how they have a great impact on the body, and having understood that, you may be able to go further with managing yourself a bit better and then bring it as part of your life. So now a little bit about me. I'm an acupuncturist naturopath who's practicing in Pune, India. I have a clinic and I offer healing people the best I can. I teach scientific Surya Namaskar through the Scientific Surya Namaskar Academy. It takes us 8 hours to teach. Over 8 weeks, we offer 70 plus levels of difficulty in Surya Namaskar. I'm a follower of Shivambu and a world leader in Shivambu. And as part of that, I offer an online clinic where people can connect to me via email, and I try to help people. This has been going on for the last 5-6 years, and it has been found to be quite useful for a lot of people. We have been doing this Freedom from Disease series now on video, putting it on video for your benefit. We would like you all to make use of it and benefit immensely. We offer these lectures at the corporate level within Pune and surrounds, which is a 4-hour lecture for large groups and corporates. We are attempting to take naturopathy on a scientific basis because we believe that there is a lot of science attached to natural therapies, but it is not being exposed or presented in the right light. And at this stage, I would like to bid adieu to you. Goodbye on this video. And I look forward to meeting you in the next video. Namaskar.
Thank you Anand Bapat for your valuable information on health.
This series is a 15 to 22 part series on developing oneself into a healthy person. This series will educate, guide and provide support through our online educational and support services to enhance your health. All queries are welcome on the following email.
Download app Health Siren for all health solutions at your doorstep.